30 below and the wind had fangs. Elias Thornwood split frozen spruce outside the tall peak lodge, his breath fogging white in the February dawn. Shadow, his 11-year-old tracker, growled low, uncertain. A shape moved through the white oat, not a shape. A girl barefoot, maybe 15, dragging a silver fox twice her size through thigh-deep snow. She stopped at his fence, eyes feral as the thing she pulled. Her voice was raw, unused. Water. The fox's tongue lolled purple-black poisoned. Before Elias could move, hoof beats. Harlan Driscoll burst from the storm. Deputy Klein behind him, waving a folded paper like a weapon. Thornwood, legal notice. 90 days to vacate. You're on mining land. Always have been. Harlan's smile cut sharper than the cold. He saw the girl and his eyes narrowed with something worse than greed. Hunger. Where'd you find that wild thing? Harlan asked. Elias's hand found his rifle. She's under my protection now. Harlan laughed. So is this land, old man. According to the law. He hammered the eviction notice into Elias's door. 3 strikes like nails in a coffin. And rode off. The girl whispered, "Fox is dying. Water poison." Elias looked at her shoulder blade, visible through torn deer hide, a crude tattoo. T inside a pickaxe. Human-made. Deliberate. Who are you? The lodge's heat hit like a fist. Elias peeled frozen deer hide off the girl's limbs. Careful, methodical the way his cavalry sergeant had drilled into him 40 years back. Frostbite protocol. Don't warm skin too fast or you'll lose fingers. Her dress cracked like thin ice as he worked it free. Underneath rough linen, hand-sewn stitches uneven. Fox-taught or self-taught? He couldn't tell. He wrapped her in Mara's wool blankets, the ones that still smelled faintly of sage from the cedar chest. The scent made his throat tight. Shadow sniffed the girl's matted hair. Whined. Her eye snapped open, pupils blown wide, feral. She jerked away from Elias with a sound halfway between growl and whimper. Easy. Elias raised his hands. Just warming you up. You're safe. Her gaze darted. Door window. Shadow. Elias. Door again. Trapped animal calculating escape routes. Then she saw Shadow fully. The graying muzzle. The patient amber eyes. Her face shifted. She made a sound. 3 short yips, 1 long. Shadow's ears shot forward. He took 2 careful steps closer, tail low but wagging. The girl extended one trembling hand. Shadow licked her knuckles, something in her spine unlocked. She exhaled long, shuddering, and collapsed back against the blankets. That's a fox call, Elias said quietly. How do you know Shadow would answer? The girl pointed at Shadow, then at herself, tapped her chest twice. Same pack. Elias's chest tightened. You've been alone a long time, haven't you? No answer, just those wild eyes watching him like he might turn dangerous any second. He moved slowly to the fireplace, hung a pot of water to boil. The smell of wood smoke filled the lodge. Spruce and ash, the smell of winter survival. Got a name? He asked. Silence. All right. I'm Elias. This here's Shadow. And he studied her. Young, starved, thin, tougher than rawhide. You're safe now. That's what matters. She curled onto her side, one hand tangled in Shadow's scruff, and stared into the fire like it held answers she'd forgotten how to ask for. Outside, wind screamed through the chinking gaps, a sound like foxes yipping. Or maybe that was real foxes up on the ridge. Elias touched the eviction notice in his pocket. 90 days. Elias stood on the porch at first light, the eviction notice trembling in his hands. Not from cold, from rage so deep it felt like sickness. 90 days. May 20th, the date Mara died. For years ago, but the wound still bled. Harlan's cruelty had timing. Mining land. Elias muttered. That's a damn lie. I filed proper in 78. 14 years. I've a sound cut him off. The girl crouched over the fox carcass in the snow, prying its jaws open with bare hands. She sniffed the blackened tongue, grimaced, spat, looked up at Elias. Poison, she said. The word came out thick, unused. Not bear, not cat, man. Poison. Elias descended the steps slowly. His knees protested. 63 years. And every one of them lived in those joints. Strych9. She tilted her head. Didn't know the word, but she gestured. Eating, convulsing, dying. Nodded. Someone's baiting foxes. Elias's jaw clenched. Harlan's boys probably. They want your pack gone. The girl was already drawing in the snow. Crude lines, the lodge, square, the creek, wavy, 3x marks downstream, each maybe 8 mile apart. She tapped the first X, poison. Second X, poison. Third, poison. You're saying there's bait set all down the creek? She nodded, pointed at the lodge, swept her arm wide. Foxes come here for water when the creek's frozen upstream. If poison spread, they'd have nowhere safe to drink. Elias understood. Harlan wasn't just evicting him. He was scorching the earth. Kill the foxes. Terrify the girl. Isolate the old man. Break him completely in 90 days. How many foxes in your pack? Elias asked. The girl held up both hands. 10 fingers. Closed one fist. Opened it. Showed 3 fingers. 13 foxes drinking poisoned water. Elias looked at the eviction notice, then at her crude map. The smell of cold metal. The fence post Harlan's deputy had struck still hung in the frozen air. We've got till May to prove this land's mine, but you've got till tomorrow to save your family. The girl's eyes locked on his fox bright, decisive. She nodded once, sharp, certain. Shadow limped over, pressed against Elias's leg. The old dog's warmth was the only comfort in a world gone cold and crooked. The land office smelled of ink, leather, and Harlan Driscoll cedar cologne, thick enough to gag on. Elias slammed his homestead patent on the oak desk. The paper was yellowed but intact. The territorial seal still legible. 14 years I've worked that land. Built that lodge with my own hands. Buried my wife there. His voice was stone. You've got no right. Harlan didn't even look at the document. He opened a drawer, pulled out a rolled map, unfurled it with theatrical slowness across the desk. Pacific Mining Survey 1890 Congressional Land Grant authorized under the Harlan Act. His finger traced a red line bisecting Elias's property. Your lodge sits on mining easement. Always has. Elias stared at the map. The boundaries were wrong. Shifted 200 yards east of where his fence line ran. That survey is a fraud. I was there in 90. No surveyor ever walked my land. Marcus Tully walked it. Harlan tapped a signature at the map's bottom. Licensed territorial surveyor. His word against yours, old man. And he's got paper. So do I. Elias shoved the homestead patent forward. Harlan finally glanced at it, smiled. Territorial filing. Cute, but federal land grants supersede territorial claims. That's law, Thornwood. The kind that doesn't care about your feelings. He re-rolled the map with slow, deliberate movements. The sound of paper sliding against paper filled the silence like a snake moving through grass. 90 days, then the mining company takes possession. You can file an appeal in Denver, but he shrugged. That costs money, lawyers, time you don't have. Elias's fists clenched. Why? You've got half the county already. Why my dirt? Harlan leaned back. His chair creaked. Expensive wood. Well-willed. Mining company building a spur to the new copper veins. Needs a water station. Your spring's the only reliable source for 20M. His eyes glittered. Nothing personal, just business. Everything's personal when it's the last thing a man's got. Deputy Klein stepped forward, hand on his pistol grip. Mr. Driscoll's been patient, Thornwood. Don't test it. Elias looked between them. Harlan's smug certainty, Klein's bought loyalty, and felt the trap close. Even if he was right, he'd drown in legal fees before he ever saw a judge. The smell of Harlan's cologne was overpowering now. Elias's head swam with it. 90 days, Elias said quietly, turned to leave. Oh, and Thornwood. Harlan's voice stopped him at the door. That feral girl you're harboring? Might want to bring her into town. Territorial Orphanage has questions about unclaimed trappers. Elias didn't trust himself to answer. He walked out into February cold that felt warmer than Harlan's office. Rufus's anvil rang 3 times, steady, rhythmic, a heartbeat in iron. Elias stood at the yard's edge, watching his old friend shape a horseshoe with the same patience he'd shown at Little Bighorn, binding wounds while Sue bullets screamed overhead. He's stealing it, Rufus. Elias's voice was raw. 14 years and Harlan stealing it with paper and lies. Rufus plunged the shoe into the water trough. Steam hissed, smelling of scorched metal and coal smoke. Mining survey claims my lodge is on their easement. Federal grant beats my territorial deed. Elias spat into the dirt. Marcus Tully's signature on the map. You know him? Rufus's face darkened. He set the shoe aside, lowered his voice. Know of him? Harlan's brother-in-law. Married Harlan's wife's sister 2 years back. The world tilted. Harlan's got kin signing fraudulent surveys. More than that. Rufus wiped his hands on his leather apron. The smell of sweat and hot iron clung to him. I was in the Dusty Spur last week. Heard Harlan talking to a mining man from Denver. Said something about water rights secured, spur contract signed. Then he laughed. Said, and if the old fool fights it, the kickback alone will buy me a house in Salt Lake. Elias's vision blurred red. He's getting paid for my land for your spring. Rufus corrected. Mining company needs water for the steam drills. Harlan brokers the deal. Gets a cut. He struck the anvil once. A single sharp note. Clean legal theft. Elias leaned against the fence. The weight of it crushed his lungs. Harlan wasn't just greedy. He was systematic. The eviction, the survey, the timeline, engineered for maximum profit. There's something else. Rufus's voice went quieter. That girl, the wild one you found. Harlan mentioned her to Klein. I overheard. What did he say? Said if she's who he thinks. Lila Voss's daughter. There's inheritance money. Salt Lake family's been searching 14 years. Whoever rescues her gets a finder fee. Maybe more. Rufus gripped Elias's shoulder. The touch was warm, solid, the only real thing in a world gone to fraud and greed. Harlan's thinking 2 paydays, Elias. Your land and that child. Elias's stomach turned to ice. He can't. She's not property. Neither's your land, but that ain't stopping him. Rufus's eyes were grim in the forge light. You need a lawyer. Someone who knows federal land law, and you need proof that survey is a lie. I've got 90 days and $40 to my name. Then you'd better pray God's on your side. Rufus struck the anvil 3 more times, the rhythm like a war drum, 'cause Harlan Driscoll sure ain't. Sadie Mills rode up on a mule that looked as skeptical of the journey as she did. She dismounted stiffly, handed Elias a telegram envelope without preamble. This came through this morning. Flagged urgent. She glanced past him at the girl who watched from the doorway like a half-tamed fox. That the one everyone's talking about depends what they're saying. Sadie's mouth twitched almost a smile. That Elias Thornwood has gone soft harboring strays. She nodded at the girl. Harlan's saying you kidnapped her. Harlan's a liar. Amen to that. Sadie's voice dropped. He groped me last fall at the harvest dance. When I need him, he got my husband fired from the mine. She tapped the telegram. So if you're fighting Harlan, I'm listening. Read it. Might be important. She left before Elias could thank her. The smell of road dust and mule sweat faded as she disappeared down the trail. Inside, Elias unfolded the telegram. Read it twice to make sure he wasn't imagining things. Lila Voss inquiry. Stop reply if child found. Stop. A Voss. Esquire Salt Lake. Stop. Reward for information. Stop. Lila Voss. The name triggered something. A memory from 14 years back. A wagon burned on the Tall Peak Trail. Bodies never found. Rumors of a baby, but search parties came up empty. Sage. And the girl had chosen that name yesterday, pointing at the winter-dead shrubs on the lodge wall. Sage green when others die. She approached now, wary. Shadow flanked her. Elias pointed at the telegram. Lila Voss. Do you know this name? Sage stared at the letters. Her hand drifted to her shoulder, fingers tracing the tattoo through her shirt. Her lips moved, forming sounds she hadn't made in years. Lildy Elias's breath caught. You remember her? Sage's face twisted. Confusion, pain, something trying to surface through 14 years of fox-taught survival. Fire, she whispered. Smoke, scream. Her hand pressed harder against the tattoo. Mother. The word broke something in Elias's chest. Your mother's name was Lila. Sage nodded, but her eyes were distant, lost in a memory that was more feeling than image. Fire took her. Foxes? She struggled. Foxes found me. Elias showed her the telegram again. The paper crinkled in his hands. Thin, fragile, but weighted with possibility. Someone's looking for you. A lawyer in Salt Lake. He paused. A Voss. Could be family. Sage's eyes widened, hope and terror in equal measure. Family, maybe. She backed away, shaking her head. Pack is family. Foxes, Shadow, Elias. Her voice firmed. This family. I know, child. But if there's blood, kin out there. Kin who've been searching for you. They deserve to know you're alive. Sage's jaw set in a way that reminded Elias of Mara when she'd made up her mind. Send paperwork, but I stay with Pack. Elias nodded slowly. All right, I'll wire back. See what this R. Voss has to say. He didn't tell her the other part. The part where a Salt Lake lawyer might be his only shot at proving Harlan's survey was fraudulent. Sometimes hope had to be guarded like coals in winter, fed slowly, or it'd burn out before it caught. The creek was frozen solid, except where the spring fed it, a 10-foot stretch of open water steaming in the sub-zero air. Sage moved along the bank on all fours, nose close to the snow, reading scent trails Elias couldn't begin to see. Shadow followed her, mimicking her movements. It would have been comical if it weren't so deadly serious. There, Sage pointed at a snow-covered rock. Under Elias brushed snow away. His fingers went numb instantly, the cold biting through his gloves. Underneath, a chunk of raw meat, grayish-purple, studded with white powder. Strych9 enough to kill a full-grown fox in minutes. He wrapped it carefully in cloth, added it to the sack already holding 2 others. The smell of death clung to the fabric, faint but unmistakable. How do you smell it under 6 in of snow? Sage tapped her nose. Foxes teach bitter smell. Death smell. She sniffed the air moved 15 feet downstream. The sound of her breath, controlled, focused, was the only noise besides the creek's murmur. More here. This time she didn't wait for Elias. She dug through snow with bare hands, exposed another bait. But when she bent to sniff it, she jerked back, face twisting. What's wrong? This one different? She sniffed again, more carefully. Smell like Harlan. Elias froze. You know what Harlan smells like? Sage nodded. When he came day of paper and door, he touched fence. Fence still smell same. She pointed at the bait. Hand smell same. Elias understood. Harlan's cologne, that overpowering cedar. She'd scent marked him the way a fox would mark territory. And now his scent was on this bait, meaning he touched it, placed it himself. He did this himself, Elias said slowly. Didn't trust his boys with it. Why? Because if someone finds these baits, he wants deniability. Hired hands can be blamed, but this one, Elias wrapped it separately, marked the cloth with a charcoal X. This one proves he personally tried to kill your pack. Sage's eyes hardened. She bared her teeth. Not quite human, not quite fox. Harlan is enemy. Yes, pack protects. Pack fights enemy. Not yet, Elias said quietly. Right now, we gather proof, evidence, things the law can't ignore. Sage didn't look convinced, but she nodded. Turn downstream. More baits. Find all save pack. They worked until dusk, pulling 13 poison baits from a 2-mile stretch of creek. The cold seeped through Elias's coat, his boots, into his bones. 13, the exact number of foxes in Sage's pack. Harlan had done the math. He'd planned to exterminate them completely. As they walked back, Elias carried the sack of evidence in a cold certainty. Harlan Driscoll wasn't just greedy. He was thorough, and thorough men didn't leave witnesses. Elias hadn't been to church since Mara died, but Sage had asked, curious about the singing house she'd heard from the ridge. So they sat in the back pew of the Pinewash Chapel, Sage, wearing a borrowed dress from Rufus's wife, her hair braided clumsily by Elias's rope-worn hands. She'd insisted on keeping her fox-tooth necklace, though. The bone gleamed white against the dark calico. Father Lucas Reed was mid-sermon. Something about Lazarus rising when the door banged open. Harlan Driscoll strode in. Deputy Klein behind him. The congregation turned as one. The smell of wood polish and old hymnals gave way to Harlan's cedar cologne. Thick, invasive. Forgive the interruption, Father, Harlan said, not sounding sorry at all. But I have a moral duty, he pointed at Sage. That child is being held against her will by a man with no legal authority. She belongs in the territorial orphanage where trained women can civilize her. Murmurs rippled through the pews like wind through winter wheat. Elias stood slowly, his knees protested, cracking loud enough for the front row to hear. She's not being held. She's being protected. From what? Soap and schooling. Harlan's voice dripped false concern. Look at her. half wild, dressed in rags until good Christians took pity. You found her in the woods, Thornwood. That doesn't make you her father. Sage's hand found Elias's, gripped tight. Her palm was calloused, rough as tree bark. Father Reed raised a hand for silence. Mr. Driscoll, this is God's house. We don't conduct legal disputes during worship. This isn't legal, Father. It's moral. Harlan addressed the congregation now, a preacher in his own right. We all know Elias Thornwood's grief has compromised his judgment. First he abandons his ranch, hides in the hills. Now he's harboring a feral child, refusing proper care. He paused, letting the words sink in like poison into snow. Is that the Christian thing to do? A few heads nodded. Mrs. Dalton in the third row, old Jonah Hale near the stove. Others looked uncomfortable studying their shoes. Perhaps, Father Reed said carefully, we should ask the child herself. He turned to Sage. Child, what's your name? Sage. Her voice was quiet but clear as creek water over stone. Sage. Has Mr. Thornwood harmed you in any way? Silence. The church held its breath. Someone's stomach growled loud in the stillness. Sage looked at Elias, then at Harlan, then back at Father Reed. When she spoke, her words were halting but deliberate. Each one chosen like stones for a wall. Elias's pack father, first man not hurt. Before. Men with guns, men with fire, men who chase. Her hand touched her tattoo through the dress. Mother gone. Foxes find me. Foxes teach. Keep alive. She met Harlan's eyes without flinching. Elias, same. Keep alive. Keep safe. Not steal, not hurt. Pack father. Ah. The church erupted in whispers, sharp, sibilant like autumn leaves scattering. Harlan's face flushed red. You see, he snapped. She's been brainwashed. Thinks like an animal. She needs professional care. What she needs, Father Reed interrupted, his voice, steel wrapped in velvet, is to be left in peace while the law sorts custody properly, not dragged through accusations during the Sabbath. He looked at Harlan, a look that had probably sent sinners running for 40 years. You have legal avenues, Mr. Driscoll. Use them outside my church. Harlan's jaw worked. He glanced at Klein, who shrugged. No support there. Fine. Harlan's voice was ice now. But when the orphanage comes for her, don't say I didn't warn you, Father. He left, slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. The smell of his cologne lingered like a curse. Elias exhaled. Sage's hand was still locked in his, trembling now. He squeezed gently. You did good, child. But Father Reed's face was troubled. After the service, he pulled Elias aside. The sound of the congregation filing out. Boots on wood. Quiet conversations faded behind them. Harlan's right about one thing. You have no legal standing. If he petitions the territorial court, they'll side with the orphanage. Unless what? Unless someone with legal standing files for guardianship first. A lawyer perhaps. Reed's eyes were kind. Or family. That telegram you received, our Voss, might be time to call in that help. Elias nodded slowly. Outside, Sage waited by the wagon, scratching Shadow's ears. She looked small in the borrowed dress, fragile in a way she never did in deerskin. But when she saw Elias, she smiled, brief, fleeting, real. The smell hit Elias first. Smoke, sharp, wrong in the frozen night air. He bolted upright, grabbed his rifle, ran outside in his long johns. The cold bit through the thin fabric like fox teeth. The hay barn was engulfed. Orange flames clawed at the black sky. sparks spiraling up like dying stars. 3 men on horseback circled it, torches in hand. Dark shapes against the fire's hellish light. One spotted Elias raised a rifle. Thornwood. Message from Mr. Driscoll. Vacate now or next time it's the lodge. Elias aimed back. Tell Driscoll to come himself if he's got something to say. Shadow snarling furiously at the horses. Hackles raised, teeth bared. One horse reared. The rider's rifle swung toward the dog. No! Elias shouted. The shot cracked. Shadow yelped, spun, collapsed, time fractured. Elias fired, missed, his hands shaking, vision blurring red. The riders scattered, laughing, torches arcing into the snow as they galloped away. One voice echoed back through the roar of flames. Marcus says, this land ain't even yours. Surveyed it himself. You're a squatter, old man. Marcus. Marcus Tully, the surveyor. But Elias barely registered it. He dropped the rifle, ran to Shadow. The dog lay on his side, panting fast and shallow. Blood soaked the snow beneath him, chest wound high and center. Elias pressed his hand over it, felt the hot rush, the heartbeat stuttering beneath his palm. No, 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 Shadow. Stay with me. Sage appeared barefoot in her shift, eyes wide as moons. She knelt, touched Shadow's head with both hands, made a low keening sound. Half fox, half human grief. Shadow's eyes found Elias's. His tail thumped once, twice, stopped. Elias felt the life leave him. That specific stillness that wasn't sleep, wasn't rest, but absence. He'd felt it before, holding Mara as the bleeding wouldn't stop, as the midwife's face went grave and sorry, holding soldiers at Little Bighorn, boys barely old enough to shave, choking on their own blood in the Montana dust. But this Shadow had been the last thread connecting him to the life before grief. And now Sage Keening rose from the ridge. Foxes answered, yipping, mourning with her. Elias closed Shadow's eyes, lifted him, still warm, God, still warm, and carried him toward the lodge. Behind them, the barn collapsed in a shower of sparks. The sound was like bones breaking. He laid Shadow on the porch, covered him with a blanket. Sage curled beside the body, one hand on his fur, crying without sound. Her tears froze on her cheeks, tiny diamonds of grief. Elias stood there, staring at the burning barn, and something in him calcified. Harlan had taken his land, his livelihood, his reputation. Now he'd taken the one thing Elias had left that knew him before the grief. Marcus says this land ain't even yours. Surveyed it himself. Marcus Tully, Harlan's brother-in-law. The fraud wasn't just opportunistic. It was family business. Elias turned to Sage. Pack protects pack. You said that. She nodded, tears streaking her face, reflecting firelight. Then it's time we stop protecting and start fighting back. Sage's eyes met his. Grief and fury mirrored in Fox's bright pupils. From inside the lodge came a sound. 3 sharp knocks. Elias tensed, rifle in hand. But it was Father Reed, breathless from riding hard. His horse stood heaving in the yard, flank steaming. I saw the fire from town. Reed panted, then stopped. Saw Shadow's body, his face crumpled. Elias, I'm so sorry. Marcus Tully, Elias interrupted. His voice was flat. Dead. The surveyor who signed Harlan's mining map. Harlan called him Marcus at the land office tonight. His men said, Marcus surveyed it himself. That's not just a hired surveyor. His jaw clenched. That's family. Reed's face went pale. Harlan's wife. Her maiden name was Tully. Marcus's her brother. The world clicked into focus. Sharp, clear, murderous. Elias looked at Shadow's body, the burning barn. Sage's tear-streaked face. 90 days. You said I've got 73 left. He met Reed's eyes. And now I know exactly what I'm fighting. Dawn broke cold and pink over Tall Peak. Elias dug the grave beside Mara's frozen ground, fighting him every inch. His shoulders screamed. His back felt like someone had driven spikes through the vertebrae. 63 years, and every one of them was in that shovel. Sage helped, using a sharpened stick. Her hands raw and bleeding, but never slowing. The sound of metal on stone, wood scraping ice, their breathing, that was all. No words. When the hole was deep enough, Elias lined it with spruce boughs. The smell was clean, sharp, life holding death gently. He laid Shadow in. The dog's body was stiff now, frozen in the shape of running. Always running, always loyal. Elias wrapped him in the wool blanket, the same one that had warmed Sage that first night. Full circle, he murmured. Sage placed something beside Shadow, a twist of her own hair, braided with Shadow's fur. Fox ritual and human ritual mixed. Pack remembers, she whispered. They filled the grave in silence. When it was done, Elias went inside, returned with the cavalry saber that had hung above his door for 14 years. The one Mara had asked about once, why keep a weapon you'll never use? He'd never answered. Didn't know how to say, because it's for the last stand. The one I hope never comes. He drove the saber into the earth at the grave's head, blade down, hilt up like a cross. Using his skinning knife, he carved into the wooden grip. True heart. True guard. Sage traced the letters, sounding them out slowly. True guard, Shadow guard, Elias. And now Elias guards you. He stood, knees protesting like rusty hinges. That's what Shadow would want. Hoof beats. Rufus rode up, leading a pack horse laden with supplies. Hay bales, dried meat, coffee. He dismounted, saw the grave, removed his hat. Heard about last night. Brought what I could spare. Brought what I could spare. He glanced at the burned barn skeleton, black ribs against white snow. Also brought a proposal. I'm listening. Rufus pulled a sketch from his coat, a branding iron design. Not the simple Elias had used for years, but ET intertwined. The letters supporting each other like lodgepole pines grown together. Elias and family, Rufus said. Or Elias and future, or whatever the hell you want it to mean. He held it up to the light. But if you're going to fight Harlan, don't fight for your land. Fight for their land. He nodded at Sage. Make it about more than just you. Elias stared at the sketch. The T looked strong, reaching up, rooted deep. When can you forge it? Give me 3 days. Rufus folded the sketch carefully. And Elias, I talked to Sadie at the telegraph office. That our Voss from Salt Lake. She's Lila Voss's sister, a lawyer. Specializes in land disputes and family law. Rufus's eyes were serious. She's been searching for her niece 14 years. Sage's head snapped up. Aunt. Maybe, Elias said carefully. But even if she is, you don't have to. If she helps fight Harlan, Sage interrupted, her voice firm as iron. She is Pack. Pack helps Pack. Rufus grinned. Kid's got sense. I'll wire Rebecca Voss. Tell her to get up here before Harlan steals everything that ain't nailed down. After Rufus left, the smell of horse and forge smoke fading with him. Elias stood at Shadow's grave, Sage beside him. The saber gleamed in the weak sunlight, a weapon transformed into a memorial. Harlan thinks burning the barn broke me, Elias said quietly. But all he did was remind me what's worth protecting. He looked at Sage. You ready to fight back? Sage touched the saber hilt. Her fingers traced the carved words. Pack fights. I fight. Good, because when Rebecca Voss gets here, we're going to need every tooth and claw we've got. Inside the lodge, Elias spread his homestead patent on the table beside Harlan's mining survey map. The boundary discrepancies were obvious, 200 yards difference, shifting the line directly through Elias's spring. The fireplace crackled. Sage sat cross-legged near it, watching, learning. Here's what we know, Elias said, thinking aloud. Harlan's map claims Marcus Tully surveyed this land in August 1890, but Marcus is Harlan's brother-in-law, which means the survey's compromised. He tapped the poisoned baits, now stored in a crate by the door. The bitter smell still clung to them faintly. And these prove Harlan personally tried to eliminate your pack. Witnesses who'd complicate his claim. Sage studied the maps, head tilted like a fox reading wind. How we prove Marcus lie? That's the problem. Survey records are in Denver. I can't afford to travel, let alone hire a lawyer to pull files. Elias rubbed his face. His hand smelled like dirt and spruce sap from the burial. We need Rebecca Voss. If she's a real lawyer, she'll have access. What else? Elias considered witnesses. People who saw me working this land before 1890. Father Reed, maybe Rufus. But Harlan will claim they're biased. He paused, staring at the map. The strongest evidence would be proving Marcus never actually walked this survey, that he signed maps from an office in town. Sage's eyes lit up. Foxes remember Mansent. What if Marcus walked land in 1890? For summers ago. Scent fade. But she gestured at the forest through the window. Trees he touch, rocks he move. Ground he step. Foxes track old trails, very old. She pointed at the map survey line. Marcus's paper trails say he walk here. She traced the false boundary. I find his real trail. If different, he lie. Elias stared at her. You're saying you can track a 4-year-old human trail through wilderness and prove it doesn't match the map? Sage nodded, utterly confident, no doubt in those fox bright eyes. Foxes teach old scent like ghost scent. Faint, but pack finds I am pack. It was insane. Impossible. And yet she'd found 13 poisoned baits buried under snow by scent alone. She'd identified Harlan's cologne on a single bait. If anyone could track a ghost, it was this girl. If you can prove Marcus's real route doesn't match his map. Elias felt hope. Small, fragile, but real. That's fraud. Physical, undeniable fraud. I find, Sage promised, but need time and need pack help. How long? 3 days, maybe 4. She looked at him seriously. But Harlan's men, they come back. Maybe hurt pack while we search. Elias thought of Shadow, of the burning barn, of Harlan's thorough, systematic cruelty. Then we make sure they can't. I'll set watch, and when Rebecca Voss gets here, we'll have evidence even a territorial judge can't ignore. Sage extended her hand, the same gesture she'd made that first night, palm up, offering trust. Elias took it. Partners, pack, Sage corrected, and smiled. Rare, fleeting, but real. The woman who rode up to Tall Peak Lodge 3 days later looked like she'd been carved from the same granite as the mountains. Rebecca Voss was 44, grey-streaked hair pinned tight, eyes sharp as December wind. She dismounted, surveyed the burned barn, Shadow's grave, then Elias. Mr. Thornwood, I'm Rebecca Voss, attorney at law, Salt Lake. Your friend Rufus wired me. Her gaze shifted to Sage, who watched from the porch like a half-tamed fox. Rebecca's professional mask cracked. My God, she has Lila's eyes. Sage tensed, ready to bolt, muscles coiled tight. "Easy," Elias murmured. "She's here to help." Rebecca approached slowly, hands visible, empty. "Child, my name is Rebecca. I was your mother's sister, if you're who I think you are." She pulled a small object from her coat, a silver locket, tarnished with age. The metal caught the weak February light. Sage's breath caught. Rebecca opened it. Inside, a braid of dark hair preserved in a perfect curl. The smell of old leather and time rose from it, faint, ghostly. "This was your mother's. Lila wore it every day. When her wagon burned, we never found it. But if you're Abigail Voss, her daughter, you might remember it." Sage descended the steps like a sleepwalker. Reached out, touched the locket, her fingers trembled. Mother sang. Locket made music. Rebecca's eyes filled. Yes, it was a music box. Locket played a lullaby. She demonstrated the tiny mechanism. Warp now, silent, but the gears still visible through the tarnish. Sage's face crumpled. She made a sound, a sob raw and broken, and collapsed to her knees in the snow. "Mother, fire gone." Rebecca knelt beside her, professional distance dissolving. "Yes, sweetheart. Fire took her, but you survived. Somehow you survived." She looked at Elias. "How long have you had her?" 3 weeks. Found her in a blizzard dragging a poisoned fox." Rebecca's lawyer brain engaged, sharp, calculating. "Poisoned by whom?" "Harlan Driscoll to eliminate witnesses. Her fox pack before he steals my land." Rebecca stood. "All business now. Show me your deed." Inside, the smell of coffee boiling, spruce smoke, wool drying by the fire. Elias spread the homestead patent. Rebecca examined it with a jeweller's focus. Seal, signatures, filing date. She nodded slowly. "This is valid. Territorial filing 1878 properly witnessed. You've occupied continuously 14 years. Then adverse possession alone would protect you even without the patent." She pulled out Harlan's survey map, compared them side by side. Her jaw tightened. But this mining grant could supersede territorial claims if it's federal. It's a legal gray area, one that would cost $50,000 to litigate in Washington. Elias's heart sank. "I don't have $50, let alone 50,000. Which is why we don't fight it in Washington. We fight it here." Rebecca tapped the survey map. Sharp, decisive. "If this survey is fraudulent, if we can prove Marcus Tully never actually walked this land, then the mining grant is void. The land reverts to your homestead claim." She looked at him. "Can you prove fraud?" Elias glanced at Sage, who was clutching the locket like a lifeline. Maybe Sage can track Marcus's real survey route using Fox senses. "If it doesn't match his map, that's circumstantial," Rebecca interrupted. "We need hard evidence, documents, witnesses, something a judge can't dismiss." Sadie Mills, telegraph manager, said she has records. Harlan's surveyor never left town during the survey week. Rebecca's eyes gleamed like struck flint. Now that's evidence. If Marcus claimed to survey land he never visited, that's fraud. Criminal fraud. She began pacing. Boots on the wooden floor, a rhythm like a war drum. "We'll need Sadie's testimony. Father Reed's timeline confirmation. And if Sage can physically show the discrepancy, even better." "How long do we have?" Rebecca checked a small calendar from her pocket. "Your eviction is May 20th. That's 68 days. I can file for an emergency hearing in Pinevale Territorial Circuit Court. Judge Carver presides. He's honest, but by the book." She looked at Elias seriously. "We'll need ironclad proof." Elias felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Hope with teeth. Can you get us that hearing? I'll file tomorrow. Rebecca looked at Sage. But first, I need to establish guardianship. Harlan's already petitioning to place her in the orphanage. If I'm her legal kin, I can block him. Sage's head snapped up. I stay with Elias. You can, Rebecca said gently. But legally, I need to be your guardian. Just on paper. It protects you from Harlan. Sage looked at Elias. He nodded. She's right. It's armor, not a cage. Slowly, Sage nodded. The telegraph office smelled of oil and electricity. A scent Rebecca associated with Progress Information Power. Sadie Mills met her at the back door, glancing nervously over her shoulder. You're the Salt Lake lawyer, Rebecca Voss. You have records for me? Sadie pulled a ledger from beneath the counter. Heavy, leather-bound, the pages yellowed and ink-stained. August 12th through 18th, 1890. That's the week Marcus Tully claimed to survey Elias's land. She pointed at entries, careful, precise notations. Every day, Marcus sent wires to his wife, to Harlan, to the mining office in Denver. All sent from this office in town. Rebecca's pulse quickened. He never left Pinevale. Not according to this. And I remember him. Arrogant bastard. Always smelled like whiskey and pomade. He sat at that corner table for 6 days straight, drinking and filling out forms. Sadie tapped the table. A water ring still marked it. Faint, ghostly. I asked him once what he was working on. He laughed, said, survey reports. Easiest money I ever made. Don't even have to leave the chair. Would you testify to that? Sadie hesitated. Her hand went to her throat. A nervous gesture. An old fear. Harlan will destroy me. Harlan's going to prison, Rebecca said flatly. Fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder via poison, but I need witnesses willing to stand up. Sadie's jaw set. After what he did to my husband, I'll testify gladly. Rebecca copied the relevant ledger entries. Her pen scratched across paper. The sound like mice in walls. As she worked, Sadie leaned close. Her breath smelled of peppermint tea. There's something else. Harlan's been asking questions about that girl, Sage. Specifically about her family. What kind of questions? Whether Lila Voss had money. Whether there's an inheritance. Sadie's voice dropped to a whisper. I heard him tell Deputy Klein yesterday. If that girl's really a Voss, there's a Salt Lake inheritance. We need her in the orphanage before the aunt files. Once she's a ward of the territory, we can claim finder fees. Maybe more. Rebecca's blood went cold. He's not just after Elias's land. He's after Sage's inheritance. How much is there? Rebecca's mind raced. Lila's husband, Reverend Nathan Voss, had come from old Portland money. When he and Lila died, their estate went into trust for any surviving children. If Sage was confirmed as Abigail Voss, $70,000, Rebecca said quietly. Plus property in Salt Lake. Sadie whistled low, impressed, horrified. Harlan's playing for double stakes. Triple, Rebecca corrected. Land, mining kickback, and a child's inheritance. She closed the ledger with a sound like a judge's gavel. Does he know I'm here? He knows. His man, Silas Ford, has been watching the lodge. Harlan knows about the locket. Knows you're Lila's sister. Sadie's face was grim. He's planning something. I don't know what, but he told Klein. The aunt complicates things. We move faster now. Rebecca stood. I need to get back to Tall Peak now. As she mounted her horse, Sadie called out, "One more thing, Sage, the girl. Harlan's afraid of her. He told Klein that wild thing can track like a bloodhound. If she finds where Marcus really walked, we're done." Sadie's eyes were serious. "He's planning to remove her before she can testify." Rebecca found the discrepancy by accident. She was measuring the lodge's foundation, establishing continuous occupation, when she noticed the flood line carved into the interior wall, 1884, high water. She compared it to Elias's homestead plat map. The creek's course on the 1878 survey ran 30 foot south of where the flood line indicated it now ran. "Elias," she said carefully, "did the creek shift in 1884? He looked up from where he was mending harness leather. The smell of saddle soap and old sweat clung to the straps. She saw the answer in his face before he spoke. Spring flood took out the south bank. Creek cut a new channel deeper, faster, moved about 40 foot north. His voice was flat as winter sky. Changed my property line. And you didn't refile the survey." Silence. The lodge creaked in the wind. Somewhere Sage was outside with the foxes. Her voice rising and falling in sounds that weren't quite human. Weren't quite fox. "Elias, did you update your homestead claim after the creek moved?" "No." The word came out like a confession in church. "I meant to kept telling me to ride to Denver, file an amended plat, but it was planting season, then haying, then winter, and he exhaled. I kept thinking, next year, I'll do it next year. And then Mara got sick, and after she died, he set down the harness." His hands were shaking. "I stopped caring about paper." Rebecca sat down heavily. The chair groaned under her. "Harlan's going to use this. He'll argue you abandon legal claim to the new creek boundary, which means his mining survey, even if fraudulent, found unclaimed land." Elias's hands clenched into fists. "So, I lose because I was too grief-struck to file paperwork?" "Not necessarily." Rebecca tapped her pencil against the table, a nervous rhythm. "Thinking, calculating. Adverse possession law doesn't require perfect paperwork. It requires continuous open occupation. You've lived here 14 years, improved the land, paid taxes, behaved as the owner. That counts. But Harlan has a federal grant based on a survey we can prove is fake." Rebecca leaned forward. "Here's the strategy. We don't hide your mistake. We admit it. You testify honestly. I should have refiled. I didn't. But that doesn't make Harlan's fraud legal." She met his eyes. Judges respect honesty, especially when the opposition is lying through their teeth. Sage appeared in the doorway, snow melt dripping from her hair, cheeks flushed from running. "Elias did not lie. Harlan lie. Judge see difference." "From your mouth to God's ears," Rebecca murmured. She looked at Elias. "I'm filing for the hearing tomorrow. It'll be in 3 weeks, May 15th. That gives us time to gather evidence, prepare testimony." Her voice went serious. "But Elias, you need to be ready for Harlan to crucify you over this creek thing. Let him." Elias's voice was stone now. "I'll tell the truth. That's more than he's ever done." Rebecca nodded. "Then we fight this the old way with facts, witnesses, and the hope that justice still means something in Utah territory." Rufus's forge roared like a living thing. Orange heart afire in the gray April afternoon. He'd already heated the iron to white hot. The ET design glowed like a captured star. The smell of coal smoke and scorched metal filled the yard. Sparks spiraled up, dying before they reached the clouds. "Ready?" Rufus asked. Elias, Rebecca, and Sage stood around the anvil. Rufus had explained the ritual. Each person would strike 3 times, 9 strikes total to shape the brand. Old cavalry tradition, he'd said. Forging a unit marker means you're bound no matter what comes. Rufus positioned the iron. Elias, first 3. Elias took the hammer, heavy, familiar, the handle worn smooth by decades of use. He struck once for Mara, buried on this land. The anvil rang pure, clean, true. Twice for Shadow, who died defending it. The iron bent, shaped 3 times for the life he'd thought was over, but maybe wasn't. The metal sang under his hands. Sage, you're 3. Sage gripped the hammer with both hands. Her strikes were unpracticed but fierce. Each one landing with foxsure instinct. Once for her mother, lost to fire. Twice for the foxes, her first family. 3 times for this new pack, human and strange but hers. The T began to emerge, curving like a lodgepole pine, reaching for light. Rebecca, finish it. Rebecca's strikes were precise, measured. A lawyer's exactness applied to iron. Once for Lila, her sister, 14 years mourned. Twice for justice, which she'd spent her career chasing. 3 times for this girl, this man, this fight worth having. The brand was complete. Rufus plunged it into the water trough. Steam exploded, hissing like a living thing. Like foxes greeting the moon, like grief finally released. When he lifted it, the ET gleamed. 2 letters intertwined, supporting each other. Impossible to separate. This ain't just iron, Rufus said, handing it to Elias. The metal was still warm against his palms. It's a promise. When you show this to the judge, you're showing him family, not blood, but choice. That's stronger than any deed Harlan can forge. Elias turned the brand over in his hands. Solid, real, permanent. We'll need to use it, he said. Brand something. Make it official. Sage pointed at the fence post by the lodge's door. There where Harlan nailed paper. We burn over his lie. It was perfect. Elias heated the brand in the fireplace coals until it glowed orange. Carried it outside, the heat radiating against his face. The eviction notice was still nailed to the door, weathered now, ink fading like a curse losing power. He pressed the ET brand directly over Harlan's signature. The wood smoked, blackened. The smell was victory and defiance mixed. Iron over ink, family over greed. When he lifted it, the ET mark was burned deep, permanent, unmistakable. Sage touched the brand mark with one finger, then looked at Elias and Rebecca. Pack mark. We are pack now. Law see. Rebecca's throat was tight. Yes, the law will see. Rufus grinned. 3 weeks to the hearing. Harlan's going to walk in thinking he's got this sewn up. Then you're going to show him what family does to thieves. The Pinevale Courthouse was a wood-frame building that doubled as a schoolhouse. Desks pushed to the walls. A makeshift bench for Judge Leonard Carver. The judge was a stern man with white mutton chops and eyes that miss nothing. The room smelled of chalk dust and old paper. Sunlight slanted through windows, catching dust motes that drifted like lazy snow. Harlan sat at the plaintiff's table, confident, flanked by 2 lawyers from Denver and expensive suits. Elias, Rebecca, and Sage sat opposite. David facing Goliath with a lawyer, a fox girl, and the truth. Judge Carver banged his gavel. This is an emergency hearing regarding disputed land claim. Driscoll versus Thornwood. Ms. Voss, you filed. Present your case. Rebecca stood. Your Honor will prove 3 things. First, Elias Thornwood holds valid homestead claim filed 1878, continuously occupied 14 years. Second, Harlan Driscoll's mining survey is fraudulent. The surveyor never walked the land. Third, Mr. O'Driscoll has engaged in criminal acts to force eviction, including poisoning wildlife and arson. Harlan's lawyer objected. Voice smooth as oil. Your Honor, these are wild accusations. They're documented. Rebecca placed the Telegraph ledger in evidence. The thud echoed in the quiet room. August 12 through 18, 1890. The week Marcus Tully claimed to survey Mr. Thornwood's land. These records show Mr. Tully sent dailies from Pinevale. He never left town. Judge Carver examined the ledger, fingers tracing the entries. Miss Mills, you're the Telegraph manager. Sadie stood. Her hand shook, but her voice was steady. Yes, Your Honor. Marcus Tully sat in my office 6 days straight, drinking and filling out forms. He bragged he was doing survey reports without leaving the chair. The courtroom murmured, a sound like wind through dry grass. Harlan's jaw tightened. His cologne seemed stronger. Suddenly, defensive. Your Honor, Harlan's lawyer countered. My client's brother-in-law is a licensed surveyor. His methods are unorthodox but legal. Brother-in-law? Judge Carver's eyebrows rose. Mr. Driscoll, is Marcus Tully your wife's brother? Harlan hesitated. Yes, but that's a conflict of interest. Substantial. The judge made a note, pen scratching like accusation. Continue, Ms. Voss. Rebecca called Father Reed next. He testified he'd witnessed Elias on the land since 1878, that Lila Voss's wagon had burned near Tall Peak in 78, that the community recognized Elias's occupation. Then she presented the poison baits, 13 cloth-wrap bundles. The smell rose faintly from them, bitter and wrong. Mr. Thornwood and his ward found these along the creek bordering his property. Strych9 laced meat intended to kill the fox pack. She held up one bundle marked with an X. One bait, this one, carries Mr. Driscoll's distinct cologne scent. Harlan shot to his feet. That's absurd. You can't prove Sage Voss can. Rebecca gestured. She was raised by foxes for 14 years. Her olfactory tracking is documented. She identified Mr. Driscoll's that scent on this bait. Judge Carver looked skeptical. A child's sense of smell is an evidence, Counselor. Then let her demonstrate, Your Honor, the judge considered. Very well. Rebecca placed 3 identical handkerchiefs on the table, one touched by Harlan during a court recess. Too clean. Sage, can you identify which one Mr. Driscoll touched? Sage approached. The room held its breath. She sniffed each carefully, precise, focused, fox methodical, pointed at the center one. Driscoll, she was correct. The courtroom erupted. Harlan's face went purple. This is a circus, he shouted. No, Judge Carver said quietly. This is evidence. Judge Carver leaned back, studying Sage over steepled fingers. Child, do you understand what's happening here? Sage nodded. Harlan lie. Try steal Elias's home. Try kill foxes. Try take me. Her voice was rough but clear. Creek water over stone. I stop him. How? Sage reached into the leather pouch at her waist, pulled out an object that made Harlan's lawyer go pale. A weathered surveyor's stake carved with initials and a date. Found in Fox Den, 3 miles north of Harlan's map line. She placed it on the judge's bench with a sound like a tree falling. Marcus's stake. Real one, not where papers say. Rebecca stepped forward. Your Honor, Sage tracked Marcus Tully's actual survey route using scent trail methods learned from foxes. This stake with Marcus's initials MT and the date 8-1 for 890 was found inside a fox den 3 miles north of where his map claims the boundary runs. She paused. Which means he fabricated the preparation to include Mr. Thornwood's spring. Judge Carver finished. He examined the stake, the carved initials, the date matching the Telegraph records. How do we know this is authentic? Teeth marks, Sage said, pointing. Fox's drag, play, move to den. I find because Pack remember strange wood thing 4 winters ago. She looked at Harlan. No fear, just clarity. Marcus walk north. Find nothing. Mark stake. Leave. Foxes find stake. Bring to den. Marcus, go back to town. Draw a different line on paper. Line that steal water. The judge turned to Harlan. Mr. Driscoll, can you explain this discrepancy? Harlan's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. Harlan stood face red. Your Honor, this is a child raised by animals. Her testimony is unreliable. She doesn't understand. She understands tracking. Judge Carver interrupted. And this stake is physical evidence. Your brother-in-law's initials. The date matches. The location contradicts your map. He set the stake down with finality. Unless you can produce Marcus Tully to refute this, I'm inclined to believe the Fox girl over your mining company. Harlan's lawyer slumped. Rebecca pressed the advantage. Your Honor, there's one more piece of evidence. She nodded to Elias. Elias stood holding the ET branding iron. The metal gleamed in the slanted sunlight. Sir, I know I made mistakes. Should have refiled after the creek flooded in '84. Should have kept better records. His voice was steady. No shame, just truth. But I never lied. I lived on that land, bled into it, buried my wife there. And when this girl needed help, when foxes needed defending, I stood up because that's what you do when you have a home. He placed the brand on the table. The sound was like a promise kept. We forged this together, Elias and family, not just me anymore. Them, too, he gestured at Sage and Rebecca. Harlan's got paper. I've got people. I'm asking you which one matters more. The courtroom was silent. Judge Carver picked up the branding iron, turned it over, looked at Sage, then at Elias. Miss Sage, I have one question for you. Everything depends on your answer. Do you understand? Sage nodded solemn. If I rule for Mr. Thornwood, you'll stay with him. You'll be raised on that land, in that lodge. It's isolated, hard. You'll have school, but it's not civilized. He paused. But if I rule for Mr. Driscoll, you'll go to the Territorial Orphanage in Denver. Clean beds, education, proper young ladies to teach you manners. His voice was kind but firm. Which life do you want? Sage didn't hesitate. She pointed at Elias. Pack father, then at Rebecca. Pack aunt. She touched the ET brand. This family, this home. Foxes teach. Pack choose who belong. I choose. She met the judge's eyes. Fox bright human certain Elias save foxes foxes save me I save Elias that is Pack that is home paper not make home people make home 47 words everyone a nail in Harlan's coffin. Judge Carver was quiet for a long moment, then he banged his gavel. This court finds as follows. First, Elias Thornwood's homestead claim of 1878 is valid and has been maintained through continuous occupation. His failure to refile after the 1880 for flood is noted but does not invalidate adverse possession rights. Harlan started to rise. The judge's glare sat him back down. Second, the 1890 mining survey conducted by Marcus Tully is fraudulent. Mr. Tully did not physically walk the claimed boundary as evidenced by telegraph records and the stake found 3 miles off course. The survey is void. Rebecca squeezed Elias's hand. Third, the evidence of poison baits combined with the arson of Mr. Thornwood's barn constitutes criminal activity. Deputy Klein, you will place Harlan Driscoll under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and willful destruction of property. Bail is set at $5,000. Harlan shot to his feet. What? This is outrageous. You can't. I can, and I have. Judge Carver's voice was iron-wrapped in velvet. Mr. Driscoll, you weaponized the law to steal from a man who'd harmed no one. You fabricated evidence, bribed officials, and tried to murder animals to cover your tracks. In my courtroom, that earns you a cell. Deputy Klein, who'd been conspicuously silent during the trial, approached Harlan with handcuffs. He looked almost relieved. The judge turned to Elias. Mr. Thornwood, your land is yours, free and clear. Take care of it. And that girl, I will, Your Honor. We will. As Harlan was led out shouting about appeals, about injustice, Sage tugged Elias's sleeve. We win. We won. She smiled full and bright and utterly human. Then she threw her arms around him and Rebecca joined them and Rufus was clapping from the gallery and Father Reed was wiping his eyes. 2 weeks later, Harlan Driscoll stood before Judge Carver for sentencing. The courtroom was packed. Half of Pinevale had turned out to watch. Elias, Rebecca, and Sage sat in the front row. Sage wore a simple dress Rebecca had bought her, but she still wore her fox-tooth necklace. Civilized and wild, both together. Judge Carver read the charges. Conspiracy to commit fraud, criminal trespass, destruction of property, attempted poisoning of wildlife, and perjury. Mr. Driscoll, the evidence against you is overwhelming. Do you have anything to say before I pass sentence? Harlan's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client has lost everything, his business, his reputation. He asks for mercy. Mercy? Judge Carver's voice was dry as desert wind. The same mercy he showed Mr. Thornwood when he burned his barn. The mercy he showed a pack of foxes when he poisoned their water. Silence. Harlan Driscoll. You are sentenced to 18 months hard labor at the Territorial Work Camp. You will pay restitution to Elias Thornwood in the amount of $10,000 covering the barn, lost livestock feed, and legal fees. Harlan's face went ashen. $10,000 I don't have. Then you'll work it off. 18 months should cover it. The gavel fell like thunder. Additionally, your brother-in-law Marcus Tully's surveyor license is revoked permanently. He will face separate charges for fraud. Deputy Klein led Harlan toward the door. As he passed, Harlan looked back at Sage for the first time. There was no greed in his eyes, only fear. That girl ain't natural, he muttered. Klein smirked. Natural enough to beat you, Driscoll. Now move. Outside, the May sun was warm. Real warmth, not the brittle cold of winter. The smell of mud and green things pushing through earth filled the air. Rufus clapped Elias on the back. Drinks on me. Hell, drinks on Harlan. His restitution by the whole town around. Father Reed shook Rebecca's hand. You did the Lord's work, counselor. The law did its job for once, Rebecca corrected, but she was smiling. Sadie approached Sage shy. Thank you for stopping him. My husband got his job back at the mine because Harlan's not there to block him anymore. Sage tilted her head. Harlan hurt Pack. Pack stopped Harlan. That is way. Sadie laughed, startled but genuine. I suppose it is. As they walked back toward the livery, Sage asked Elias, what happens now? Now. Elias considered. Now we go home, fix the barn, plant the garden, live. Just live. Just live. He looked at her. Ain't that enough? Sage smiled with Pack. Yes, enough. June came to Tall Peak like a promise kept. Wildflowers erupted in purple and gold. The creek ran clear and loud, ice memory forgotten. The air smelled of warm soil and spruce sap. Life returning insistent. Elias stood in the garden plot, turning earth with a spade. His shoulders protested, his back ached, but the pain felt different now. Not the ache of endings, but the soreness of beginnings. Sage knelt beside him, planting seed potatoes with fox-efficient precision. She'd learned to read now, slowly but surely. Rebecca had been teaching her every evening by lamplight. "How deep?" Sage asked. "4 inches. Not too close together." Elias watched her work. "You're a natural. Foxes dig dens." "Same skill," she grinned, "but potatoes not bite back." Rebecca emerged from the lodge carrying a basket of seed packets, beans, squash, carrots. She decided to stay through summer, setting up a small law practice in Pinevale. "Someone has to keep the frontier honest," she'd said. But Elias suspected it was more about Sage than justice. Family had a gravity all its own. A bawling sound echoed from the pen. Their first spring calf, a sturdy heifer, red as clay. "Ready?" Elias asked. Sage nodded. They'd been waiting for this. Rufus had delivered the ET brand that morning, polished and perfect. Elias heated it in the forge coals while Sage calmed the calf with soft sounds. Half human lullaby, half fox yip. When the iron glowed orange, Elias pressed it to the calf's flank. "Quick, clean." The ET mark seared deep. Sage released the calf, who kicked once then trotted to her mother, branded and blessed. "First of many," Rebecca said. "First of family," Sage corrected. That evening, as the sun set gold and rose behind the peaks, they sat on the porch. The 3 of them, plus Shade, the new tracker pup, Shadow's successor in spirit, if not blood. A yip drifted down from the ridge, then another, the pack. Sage stood, cupped her hands, yip back, her voice threading between human and fox, belonging to both worlds. The pack answered. A chorus of recognition acceptance. Elias looked at Rebecca. "What are they saying?" Rebecca smiled. "You're asking the wrong person." Sage sat back down between them. "They say pack is whole again. They say spring is here. They say," she paused, searching for words. "They say family survives winter. Now we grow." Elias put his arm around her shoulders. Rebecca took Sage's hand. On the ridge, the fox's yips faded into evening bird calls, wild and tame, singing the same song. The land was theirs. The family was forged. The winter was over. And for the first time since Mara died, Elias Thornwood felt something he'd thought was lost forever. Home. Now, I ain't one for happy endings tied up neat as Sunday ribbons. Life don't work that way. Not in the high country. Not anywhere that matters. But I'll tell you what I learned that spring watching a fox-raised girl plant potatoes and a Salt Lake lawyer learn to milk a goat. Family ain't the people you're born to. It's the people who show up when the barn's burning and your last dollar's gone and the law's got teeth sunk in your throat. It's the ones who strike the anvil with you, who track your enemies by scent. Who stand in a courtroom and say, "This one's mine," when the whole world's calling you crazy. Harlan Driscoll thought land was what you owned on paper. Thought family was what you bought with finder fees and inheritance schemes. He learned different, courtesy of a 63-year-old widower, a fox girl with her mother's eyes, and the kind of justice that don't need a gun to draw blood. By summer, Rebecca had taken on 6 cases. Settlers fighting mining claims, widows defending homesteads, folks who'd been ground under by men like Harlan. She worked from the lodge's front room. Sage fetching law books, reading them slow but sure. The fox pack visited every full moon. Sage would go out, run with them through the high timber, then come back smelling of spruce and wild spaces. She'd sleep on the porch those nights, halfway between worlds. And in the morning, she'd eat biscuits and practice her cursive like any other child learning to be human. Elias rebuilt the barn by September. On the day he nailed the last shingle, he carved something into the center beam where no one but God and the rafters would see it. Mara, Shadow, Lila, all who came before E.T., all who come after, may they know this land bleeds mercy. Winter came again as winter does. But this time when the snow fell and the wind yipped and the lodge creaked under 30 below cold, Elias Thornwood wasn't alone. He had a pack, and pack survives.